Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. You can find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications, Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast, thenewscasters.com. By the way, they have an app now for whether it's your Apple or your Android phone. And you can also find us on the radio, icradio.media. Thank you again so much for watching. Oh, and by the way, I am listening because you guys absolutely rule me. You tell me what kind of shows you would like to see. And so all you have to do is keep sending emails. Donna@donnasedge.com. Donna@donnasedge.com. I have a special friend with me right now. Ran into him at an event at the Eagle Forum. His name is Alan Mendenhall. Alan does it all. I mean, thanks for being on the show. You're hard to tag sometimes. Of course, I know I'm busy too, but I'm always looking forward to seeing you. And most of the shows people would love to see has anything to do with gardening, of course, saving money, and how to deal with your finances. And some political stuff, but they're not as much into that as they are, how can we make a living? We're in a bad economy. What can we do? And Alan, you're the pro at that. So let's dig in and start talking.
Well, I don't know that I am a pro at that, but I'm happy to be one. I mean, there, in terms of, I mean, it's fairly simple, easier maybe said than done, but setting goals for yourself, creating a budget for your income and your expenses, managing debt, paying off those debts with the highest interest rates first, putting money away for that rainy day fund, saving for retirement. I was talking to somebody the other day who had known Jack Hawkins, our chancellor at Troy University, and she had worked for him early in her career, and he noticed that she was filling out paperwork, or she was telling him about filling out paperwork. I can't remember the details, but she said, I could really use that extra $25 a month in my pocket. And this was way back in the early 80s, probably. And he said, you mean you're not going to take that little bit of retirement out of each paycheck that's coming in? And she said, well, no, that's the thing. I could use that $25. He said, no, you need to have that going in there and didn't budget and figure out, because one day you'll thank me when you find out. And sure enough, she did thank him one day. Now, she's not retired. Neither is the chancellor. they're both not the types to retire, but she's got a nice little nest egg put away. And, other things, investing wisely. There are many different theories about how to play stocks and invest in capital markets, and people have different risk tolerance. So that's a sort of a different area where people need to talk to wealth managers. But yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't require actually expertise. It's just it's just, you think about profit. Somebody was saying the other day, I was speaking at a group, and a young person stood up and said something about profits aren't good, profits are bad things. And I said, well, profits, that's just math. It's just overall revenue minus expenses. It's just math. There's nothing bad about it. And he thought it was bad that corporations would pursue profits. And I said, well, corporations are just vehicles. Corporations can do great things or they can do bad things, but a corporation has to make profits if it's going to provide quality goods and services, create jobs, innovate, hire people, could participate in philanthropy or charity. A corporation's got to have profits for these things. But in general, most corporations, most of the time, operate in order to make profits. But an inadvertent byproduct of that is they also improve our lives and institutions.
Mm-hmm. Well, something, I was in corporate position with GTE for several years, and I wanted them to make a profit. And there were other employees who were walking around saying, well, look at the bucks they're making. And because I've been a business owner, I took some time off. I thought I didn't want to own a business ever again. So I started working corporate with GTE. Kind of got tired of that one, don't own business again. Once you ever own one and you're profitable, you want to do it again.
When
But
you're
I
your own
enjoyed
boss.
the time there. And man, these employees would run around saying, well, look at the bucks they're making. Because me being a former business owner, I said, I want them to, because this is job security for me. I mean, if you're working for a company and they're not making anything, they're not going to stay open very long. They're going to have to
That's
shut
right.
it down. So
That's exactly
that
right.
concern should be there, for them to make a profit.
And usually the people who get paid the most at the companies are the ones with the most pressure on them to ensure that the company succeeds. So a CEO can be fired like that typically. If a CEO is not producing results, those shareholders and the board may kick out the CEO. You need good leadership, and that's not necessarily true of maybe entry level roles or responsibilities. You can maybe underperform in those areas, and there's still a role for you to play, and you can still get a paycheck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Let's talk about a few of the companies out there that we've experienced in the past couple of years that have made some really crazy decisions. And, maybe pandering to a particular group of people, like your Bud Light, Budweiser. I mean, it
Yes.
seems so out of form for them to some of the decisions they've made, and I think they regret it now. You got to know who your customers are before you
Sure.
make those crazy decisions.
Well,
So, why are some people doing that? Why are they going woke?
Well, there are many different theories, but I think one of the leading reasons is this movement called ESG, which is an acronym that stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. And it's principally a movement in capital markets and investment that takes place among financial institutions and institutional investors. The E refers to environmental things like, biodiversity or net zero emissions by 2050. Deforestation, pollution, all those sort of environmental things. This is the sort of the obvious prong. The S refers to some sort of innocent categories like occupational safety on the in the workplace, and also some humanitarian issues. Does a company do business with tyrannical regimes? Are they affiliated with sweatshops or associated with sweatshops and things that are sort of unpopular? But also there is DEI. Diversity, equity, inclusion, is a movement of that S prong. And whether a company pays for its employees to go out of state for an abortion may fit within that S prong. The G is governance, and it deals with executive pay, board diversity and management, those sorts of things. But it also is about the shift from the shareholder to the stakeholder model of governance. So Milton Friedman articulated the traditional shareholder view of governance in a famous New York Times op-ed in about 1973. And that argues that the purpose of corporations is to maximize profits for shareholders. And it doesn't have sort of a social function as part of its DNA, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The stakeholder model is a little different. It says that corporations exist for the benefit not just of shareholders, but for stakeholders. Now, historically, a stakeholder would include employees, suppliers, customers. Well, I can tell you, even under the stakeholder model, a company has to satisfy those constituencies if it wants to succeed. It's not that you either maximize profits for shareholders or satisfy these stakeholders. You maximize profits by those stakeholders. However, stakeholderism has broadened to include things like the environment itself, or society writ large. Those are actually categories. Well, how does a corporation exist to help the environment? It's difficult to say. How do you measure that? How that if you're not dealing with profits? If a CEO is not doing well, profits are an accessible figure. Like, you can say, okay, we didn't make as much money this year as we did last year, and we didn't make as money this year as we did 2 years ago. Seems as if there is a net happening that's measurable. Well, if you shift to the stakeholder model and you start saying, oh, well, we checked all these boxes, we gave to these causes, we switched to solar, we did all these things, we committed to net zero by 2050, we bought carbon credits. Oh, but we're not profitable, but we're still succeeding because we're about stakeholders. It doesn't make sense. It's what we're talking about. And ESG is driven primarily by governments. People don't realize this. People think, oh, ESG is private business doing private things. That's not the case. Globally, there are about $100 trillion of assets under management, which is a lot of money. 25% of that roughly is passively managed. Well, think about that. $100 trillion. It's expected to be about $150 trillion by 2025, which is not very far away. How many billionaires do we have in the US? We have, I don't know, around 800, less than that probably. And then we've got, 3,200 in the whole world. Well, that's not even close to $100 trillion or $150 trillion. So where are all these assets under management coming from? Well, they're coming from governments. They're coming from state and federal pension money. They're coming from sovereign wealth funds, oil-rich nations like in the Middle East, or Norway is an oil-rich company. They have sovereign wealth funds that get invested. Government bonds, municipal bonds are invested, and then insurance, 401ks. But in general, high net worth individuals in the aggregate aren't enough to yield these high figures. So the figures come from government money, and state and federal pension money is a big one. States like Florida and Oklahoma and West Virginia have divested from companies like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, who have been very politically active. And I argue that these asset management firms are part of the reason why companies go woke, as it were. And it's because they get in there and they vote shares, and they engage boards of directors, and they push them into social and environmental causes with which the company really has no business. And it's problematic. You have institutional investors who are activist institutional investors, and they'll go in and buy shares of companies with the chief purpose of pushing that corporation into political causes. So I think that is a trend that explains to a large degree why some companies are going woke. If they're not experiencing that sort of pressure from a board member or from a shareholder, then they are mimicking what their competitors are doing who are under such pressure. There's sort of industry-wide pressure going on in many fields. And ESG, by the way, is incredibly active to states' economies in places like Alabama, because our leading industries are agriculture, forestry, timber, mining, firearms. These are politically disfavored categories under the ESG paradigm. And so states like ours stand to be harmed rather than benefited by ESG. And we have companies in our state like Regions Bank that are way gone with the ESG. And it's not at least apparent that they're doing it just because they have to. It appears that they have made hires and at high levels who are activists and promoting ESG because they believe in it.
But something, Alan, is people are becoming more educated about what's going on around them. People have found out they can do some research. You don't have to listen to everything you listen to on the news. You don't even have to listen to anything I have to say. Do your own research. It's a freedom. I'm going to tell you, you will feel so good about yourself when you go out and you find out what the truth is about things. But let me ask you this. I know what the trend is, and I know what the thought process behind it is, all that garbage. But when it comes right down to it, isn't the customer the king?
Well, in the sense that the customer is necessary for profits, as we spoke earlier. If you have no customers, you have no profits, and then you have no corporation. A corporation cannot exist except for maybe in some defunct way on the books, but it can't be an operational corporation, a living corporation without customers. And that's why to do good business, you have to figure out what consumers want, because you have to figure out what the demand is. And you have to provide what they want better than other companies do. I love Chick-fil-A. I think that Chick-fil-A employees are trained well. They're always polite. It's always a fun experience to go to Chick-fil-A. I love staying at certain hotel chains more than others. I like flying certain airlines more than I like flying other airlines. And it's because of the experience I get as a customer, not as a professor at Troy University, not as an attorney, not as a person who headed on vacation or whatever it is. It's just because I'm their customer, and they understand what that means and how to make my experience satisfying.
I wanted to mention, and this is real life experience right here. I love the Gadsden Mall. And I don't like it because it's a building. I don't like it because, I like nothing about that part of it. I really like the mall manager. Her name is Kaylee Johnson. And let me tell you about the businesses who are located inside the Gadsden Mall love Kaylee. And I'll have to tell you why. She used to work, she's done nothing but retail her entire life. So she actually gets it. So when one of the business owners inside the mall has an issue about something, she's reporting on it. And it's not, and see, she's not afraid to go to the customer and find out what their issue is. She's able to iron those issues out because she has experienced it as well. She worked for Bed Bath & Beyond for years and wound up in management and on top of management in this. So because of that, when potential customers would come in thinking about having a business at the mall, they would go, and this is what they always do. They always go to the other mall business owners, and they will ask them what their experience is. And so this is what people are getting. They're getting the idea, well, I tell you what, the mall manager goes to bat for you here. That is huge.
That is.
When someone will give that kind of recommendation because of the mall manager, because I've had experience with some mall managers who have never done retail in their life. They just got out of school. They were just thrown into that position because their daddy knew somebody or whatever. And they had no experience in that line of business. So guess what? That attracts more people that actually want to come to that mall because you have. And guess what? She's already received a position. She's already received, she's still stationed at the mall, but now she will be all over the United States helping other malls because of her experience, what she just did this Christmas and what she made happen. And so those are the kinds of people that in the long run, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, it really doesn't matter about any of that stuff. It's if you're looking at the customer comes first. That's why when we begin the show, I always mention send the emails because our listeners and folks who watch the show, they rule it. I mean, they are the boss of me. They tell Phil and me what to do. And I think that's important. And I think that's where we're losing a grip. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of businesses fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
But
and you would think, you
yeah.
think just let's just say hypothetically, half the country is Republican and half the country is Democrat. Now, it does not fall that way. I think that in terms of registered voters, I think it's under 30% registered voters for both parties. That may not be an accurate figure. I heard that recently from a television commentator, but don't know if that's an accurate figure. But that's what this person said on Fox News. So let's just say hypothetically, it is 50-50, half conservative, half liberal, just to use convenient terms. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're a business and you come out swinging one way or the other, you're going to make your product politicized. You're alienating half of the customers out there. That's a terrible decision. Why would you do that? And I think it's much better for businesses to stop playing politics, get out of politics altogether. I can understand the lobbying. I don't like it, but I can understand that that's just part of business. It's the world we live in, given the size of government and the influence of our political figures. It's the world we live in. So I can understand why businesses would lobby for this or for that. But when businesses do, to use the Anheuser-Busch example that you used, when they put a transgender spokesperson, or when Target puts age inappropriate content in the children's section of its stores, that will create an unnecessary backlash. So why in the world would you do it? Do you think that the people that are going to spend more money are the ones that embrace these sort of new ideologies. I don't understand the logic behind it, because I would think that the people that sharp at Target are a lot of salt of the earth, good people, blue collar workers, people in
Mhm.
rural America. Why they're not interested in all that other stuff. They just want to go buy a rug or whatever you do at Target. Go buy some toothpaste, buy Legos. They're not out there to make a political statement. You don't go shop at Target the way you go cast a vote at the polls. They're just
Mhm.
unlike things.
Oh, I like what you just said. Like you're casting a vote at the businesses need to understand that. They need to get it. They need to go within that grasp of things. It's so, and let me say this I'm a conservative. I mean, I've never voted any other way. I voted for Ross Perot, so I'm not necessarily a Democrat or a Republican. I'm going to vote for whoever I think is best for office. My dad, by the way, was a Democrat, mother a Republican. They were kind of upset when they found out that I voted for Ross Perot. But anyway, that was a long time ago.
A lot of people did. A lot of
Yeah,
people
so
did.
to me, he was the best person for the job. But I just wanted to say that to say this. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there are people who are transgenders all over the place, all around me. It doesn't bother me one iota unless you want to infuse your ideas to children. That bothers me. I mean, that really does. So I can walk, I can talk with you. As a matter of fact, I had a customer who was a trans. I knew he was. He comes in one day, and I sold skincare, cosmetics, and things like that. And so I made my own stuff. So he comes in one day. So I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he said, "I'm buying this. It's my girlfriend's birthday." And he said, "I just want to buy some makeup for her." And I said, "You know what? That's a personal thing." I said, "I really need to know her skin care. I need to know, dry skin, whatever, acne prone. I need to know those things before I can make a recommendation." And he said, "Well, her skin is like mine." And that was my first red flag, you know. And then he started talking. I said, "Well, does she have dark complexion, light complexion?" He said, "Exactly like mine." And I said, "What color is her hair?" He said, "Same color as my hair." Well, then I knew I was talking to him. He was going to be
Mm-hmm.
the one buying the makeup.
Yep.
So, and I went along with his gag, and I went on ahead and I said, "Okay, then this is what I recommend." I didn't like kick him out of the store. I mean,
Sure.
I just didn't do that. So I went along with his gag. So then he comes in dressed like a woman, and I knew it was the same person. I mean, he was really tall, and his dress kind of nice though, and the makeup looked really good, I thought, but I still knew that was a man. Well, I went along with his gag, and then he come in to buy more makeup. So that's my point. Us conservatives are not what people are telling you we are. We're not going to like dog face you because you're doing something we don't agree with. But I don't want it. I don't want it to become where you're going to go speak to students in school. I don't want you to enforce your ideas. I can
Yeah,
walk among you and not have a problem. I really
like
can.
the drag queen story hour in elementary schools and
Yeah,
things like that.
I
Well,
can't go for that.
and it is interesting how quickly I remember that during the same-sex marriage debates before Obergefell came down,
Mhm.
the rhetoric was about letting people make their own decisions and marry people they wanted to marry, and to prevent government from controlling their lives. But that has quickly shifted. And
Mhm.
so today you have, in particular, if we're talking about transgender pronouns, we're talking about you must use my preferred pronoun. You must not misgender. You must bake me a wedding cake. You must provide some service or other for me. And that's a return to the very style of coercion that certain activists purported to want to be free from to begin
Mhm.
with. And so undue coercion is undue coercion, no matter which person
Mhm.
is exercising it or doing it. And I find it to be problematic when people seek to weaponize either government or policies
Mhm.
in such a way as to inhibit personal liberty and personal freedom. If you are a business, you ought to be able to do to decline to do business with people if you don't want to do business with them.
You don't
Now,
want
is
to.
it bad business? In a lot of instances, that may be bad business. That may be a bad idea, but you should suffer the consequences in the marketplace for it if you want to make bad decisions.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree, 110%. I wanted to talk about this, and this is President Biden's speech last Thursday, the State of the Union address. I really paid a lot of attention to the women who are wearing white. And, women's suffrage, we're having it pretty rough. Of course, I've got it pretty good, I think. But anyway, I think we're having it pretty rough right now. So my number one question for a woman who thinks she's all for women's lib, she's just, my question to you is this. What are your concerns about a girl who has trained her entire life to be in an athletic team somewhere? And let's just use swimming for an example. And a guy who pretends to be a woman actually wins the competition because he has more arm strength than your daughter has, or your niece, or whoever. Do you have a problem with that? I mean, is it that kind of taking women back behind to the 1800s?
Well,
That's just my
I don't fit the description of the person you're describing, but I would agree with that characterization. I think that there are a lot of men taking advantage of that sort of transgender fads in order to play sports and gain fame and gain a lot of wealth and attention by beating women. But of course, this is a major setback to women if it continues, and not just continues at its current rate, but if it accelerates, then there will be very few women left in sports at all. Women who are biologically assigned, who are born women, they won't be able to participate in sports, with the exception of a few different sports. There will be some tennis players, and there will be some other forms of sports, but they won't be able to compete against men in other sports. That's a huge setback for women. Mm-hmm. I do think that women are going to be the key voters to determine this next election, which, by the way, is pretty close. When I was looking at Real Clear polling earlier this morning, I noticed that Trump has a slight edge. He's at like 47.4% as of today, which is March 12th, and Biden was at 45.7%. But that female vote is what caused Biden to win. And there have been a lot of things that have happened since the 2020 election. The Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Healthcare Organization, which overturned Roe v. Wade, is a big one. Contrary to a lot of rhetoric, it did not ban abortion. It left the issue entirely to the states, which can then outlaw abortion as they wish. There was a sort of famously or notoriously, depending on how you look at it, the IVF ruling with the Alabama Supreme Court, which did not say what much of the media alleged that it said, or what it held. It held something quite different from sort of the media caricature. But that case is actually potentially going to be on rehearing. I think the parties have filed motions for rehearing. So we'll see what happens, how the Alabama Supreme Court handles that. But, Democrats are arguing for abortion access as a right. Republicans are still mostly opposed to it. But these are issues that will be at the forefront of the next debate. Of course, economic issues are always part of the election, but I think what will be different this time, in terms of rhetoric, in terms of narrative, is the emphasis on democracy, because you have both parties alleging that the other is a threat to democracy. Mm-hmm. That is a very large claim. Joe Biden, of course, is saying that Donald Trump is denying the legitimacy of the 2020 election and did not ensure a peaceful transfer of power. He's being criticized and portrayed as sort of a Aryan, and the narrative is that he is a threat to democracy. Well, on the other side, people are saying, well, this was an illegitimate election in 2020, and people still don't believe that Joe Biden is the legitimate president. And so they're saying that that's a threat to democracy, that in fact we need free and fair elections, and we need more restrictions on voting to prevent fraud, because voter fraud prevents true democracy from flourishing. And, you're going to have these sides arguing about this, but each one is going to portray the other as an enemy of democracy. And I think that's something different and interesting about 2024 that we haven't quite seen before.
Well, let me ask you this, though. When it comes right all down to the whole thing, when it comes down to the very end of everything, isn't it about the economy, stupid? You remember that. It's about the economy, stupid. That's what I still say that's what it's going to boil down to.
Yeah.
I don't think people are going to care about abortion. I don't think they're going to care about anything else. I don't care if you wear a dress and you're a man. People are not going to care about that. It's going to be, how can I feed my family?
Well, and I think that is, I think polls are showing that is what people are interested in, regardless
and the border.
Right. And the border is a huge one this election. But no matter what sort of figures come out, whether they're from the government or whatever, people aren't feeling prosperous the way they once had. And I think part of that is due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which was a major factor to the high inflation, which began in 2021, and the effects of which we still feel today. That generated a supply chain crisis. It devalued our currency. Then we've got this ESG movement, which is really affecting energy in Europe, but all these things spill over to the United States. For example, Germany was not nuclear. They were dependent on Russia for energy and power. And guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. And now all of a sudden, Germany has got to go nuclear again. So when Germany thought it was going to be proudly ESG, and then it realized, there are national security implications for this. It's not as if, nuclear is off the table. We're just, it's just pandering. We're going to rely on someone else's nuclear energy, nuclear power, and not our own, but we still need nuclear. But Biden has touted his Bidenomics, so-called, which no one seems to be able to define what that is, but it probably has something to do with the Infrastructure Investment Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan. These are all sort of big government programs. And I tend to believe that these things slow the economy down, and that deregulation, tax breaks, freeing up the economy will accelerate the economy.
I think so too. Alan, let's go into a commercial break, and we'll be right back in just a few minutes. We've been a little past, but who cares? Interesting topics. We'll be right back. Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of the Cobb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. Jeff McCurdy of the McCurdy Law Firm has been a public service of this area for over 10 years. McCurdy, a member of the Henniger City Council, serves as prosecutor for the town of Sylvania and was named public defender for the city of Rainsville. The McCurdy Law Firm is located at 17326 Alabama Highway 75 in Henniger to better represent his Jackson and DeKalb County clients. If you need to be represented by a true public servant with proven success, call Jeff at 256-996-8701 or send a private email to mccurdylawfirm@gmail.com. No representation is made that the legal services performed is greater than the legal services performed by other lawyers. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community, whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need. Toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
My Towels solved the problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring-spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
MyPillow.com. Good afternoon, everyone. We are back. Thank you so much for watching Donna's Edge Talk Show. We're on every Monday through Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. Central as we all get to ride home with you in the afternoon. Wanted to thank a very special couple of folks who we have wonderful sponsors, by the way, the best in the world. You absolutely are. Bobby Ledbetter with Twin City Used Car Sales is in Gadsden, Alabama. I want to thank Bobby. And now, you know, Bobby's the kind of a guy, he is into helping his neighborhood. Remember when COVID hit? And he goes into various neighborhoods, even people outside of his area. And so they brought food over and was feeding a lot of folks. Gadsden Mall was one of them. And so I remember that day, it was so hot outside. It was July. And we fed over 2,000 people that day. Boy, was that hot. And also in various other areas around the state of Alabama, he did the same thing. Remember that, okay? And he was doing this money out of his own pocket to do it. No funding by the government, no nothing. So he just wanted to do this. And also mypillow.com. Make sure you use promo code Donna. You'll get extra special savings there. Running all kinds of great, great deals. A good guy, patriot, loves the United States. Those are the kind of people you're going to buy from. I have Alan Mendenhall with me right now. And Alan, let's talk about what you do. I mean, you do everything else. Your business card has to be like huge.
Well, my main position is as Associate Dean of the Sorrell College of Business at Troy University and Executive Director of the Manuel H. Johnson Center for Political Economy. The Johnson Center is a free market research and educational institution that runs a free enterprise scholars program for undergraduates. We have a master's in economics program. We are unashamedly free market in orientation, so we teach things like Austrian economics and public choice economics that are associated with free market scholarship and schools of thought. And we weigh in on policy issues all the time, sometimes to our own detriment, but we stand boldly and proclaim what we believe to be the truth.
You know, something would be a great place for, if you're still in high school right now, you're trying to decide what you want to do, economics would be it. But you guys have a great college out there.
We do. We have a great economics program. We have very high quality economists affiliated with the Johnson Center, and we bring in guests from all over. We've got a professor from the University of Florida coming in I guess it's a couple of weeks, but we've had significant figures in over the last few years, and students who study with us get to meet these people and do internships up in DC or all over the country and work with policy analysts at think tanks, with writers at major journals and magazines and newspapers. And so if you come study with us, we'll create opportunities for you.
A little bit later in this show segment, I would like to talk about why people don't vote. That's really important. But another thing I wanted to talk about was the money issue that, our country is in. You couldn't run a business like that. You and I have talked about this a lot. A lot of the emails that come in are we losing the dollar? What are we going to do if we lose the dollar? What would happen to this country? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, over $34 trillion of debt is unsustainable. Just consider what the interest on that is. It's unbelievable. And we still continue to spend more than we take in. We can't balance a budget. This would not work with a household. I don't know why we think it would work with a government. There are some sort of fringe economists out there promoting modern monetary theory and other things that are destructive of the dollar. Whether it's disingenuous, whether these people sincerely believe in the theories that they're promulgating, or whether they actively just seek to undermine our country. I really, truly say that in all sincerity. But we have got to start figuring out ways to rein this stuff in, and we've got to have a more robust private sector, especially in states like ours. I think that Alabama is a pretty red state, but in terms of our economics, we rank poorly on economic freedom indices. We don't do very well compared to a lot of other states. And you look at the states that do well, and some of them aren't very red. I mean, New Hampshire is one of those states that's sort of a reddish state among blue, but it's one that does quite well in these economic freedom indices. And I can't quite put my finger on why we haven't paid much attention to that. Now, I think we're going to see some changes. Organizations like Club for Growth, and full disclosure, I am a 2024 Club for Growth fellow with some other great Alabamians. Susan DeBose is a fellow with me this year, and Andrew Sorrell was one last year. John Wall was one the year before that. But I think Club for Growth is pretty free market, and they're going to start participating in our elections. We now have an Americans for Prosperity chapter here in Alabama, an Alabama AFP chapter that's run by Adam Thompson. And so I suspect there will be some pressures in Montgomery that legislators haven't felt before in the next decade, especially as Alabama continues to fall in those indices. We're going to see it rise. We're going to bring it back up, because we know red states are booming right now. Florida and Texas are doing great.
We should be.
And we should be too. There's no reason why we shouldn't have people from Florida moving to Alabama because we're better. And I think that other red states are benefiting from migration. People are leaving New York and California in droves. The Midwestern states are dying out. and people are coming south. Red states are doing better than blue states economically across the board. And it's an exciting time to be in a red state. We just need to jump up and take advantage of the opportunity before all the red states around us, gobble up all the talent and bring in all the industry. We need some of that too. And we need to do it not just through economic incentive packages. There's a lot of scholarly literature out there showing that over time, those don't actually work all that well, that they benefit the companies very much, but the people not so much. So we need to free up the economy and lower taxes and incentivize businesses sort of the old fashioned way. Give them an environment that's hospitable for business, not by just giving them a bunch of government money to come, but by giving them the conditions necessary to flourish.
A lot of states will give people money to come to their city or whatever. I remember we were living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the banana company, Chiquita Banana Company, they were given like millions of dollars to come locate and have a headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, it was exactly like some of the folks were saying, no, let's not do that, because they'll only get here long enough, stay here long enough for that money, then they'll go somewhere else. Well, guess what? That's what they did. As soon as the time was up, they left Charlotte and went somewhere else. It was money making for them.
That is very common. That is an anecdote that is actually substantiated by data, and you can find numerous studies showing that those things happen all the time.
Mm-hmm. And so I think we need to stop doing that. I think it needs to be more of I sometimes think it could be most of the people we have in Montgomery who are letting this happen. But I think we need to stand up on our own 2 feet and really need to push and help the middle class and your small business owner. I mean, that's where it all goes. That's where all the cogs are. I mean, making anything work.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think we need to empower the people who are already here doing great things. And that doesn't mean throwing money at them. It just, as I mentioned earlier, it means setting up the framework, setting up the conditions necessary for them to flourish.
Well, I know how that could work. I hand on this all the time, and that's fair tax.
That would you've been on that since Ross Perot, apparently.
I've been on that bandwagon a long time, but I can see how that would work. And we kind of had a touch of that when Trump was president. The incentivizing people that actually want to stay in the United States. So we did see kind of a glimpse of what that can do. So I just, that's my opinion. I think that would absolutely work. And if Alabama could be the first state to do it, that everybody would be coming here. Because I'm just telling you, for all you folks who are watching all over the country right now, Alabama has beautiful resources. You've got parks. The area I'm in right now is right in the middle of all the big cities. I mean, I'm like right smack dab in the middle of your Huntsvilles, your Birmingham, and we got Gadsden real close by. You've got, Atlanta again, and then there is Chattanooga. We're right in the middle of everything. I mean, this would be perfect. Land does not cost very much at all here. So you can leave your northern state where you're paying a lot of money for where you live and your business, come down here and pay a fraction. I mean, it would just behoove you to do that.
You're exactly right, Donna. My wife and I looked at a house over the weekend, and it was on the very top of a mountain in Sylacauga, looking out over the Talladega National Forest. Astounding views, amazing house. I mean, it's hard to describe the views. It's something out of like a Wordsworth poem. And the house would be, I don't know, if you had it in Atlanta and you had a view like, I mean, you couldn't have a view like that in Atlanta, but I mean, it would be a $3 million house at least, and it's not. That's not what it's being listed at now. But you would think just from looking at this would be millions of dollars to buy this house on this property, and it is not even close to that. And it's just amazing that you can find a property and a home like that. And so, as you say, this is a great time for people to come to Alabama and buy something like that before the opportunities are gone, because eventually we're going to get discovered and people are going to buy up all that stuff.
I checked on we're on 38 acres of land. So I checked on 38 acres in Charlotte, North Carolina. I wouldn't be able to afford that at all. It'd be way over $2 million. I mean, just on the acreage itself.
Yeah. Well, even in Auburn, because Auburn is growing, Auburn would be one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in Alabama, if not the fastest growing. And it's very difficult to find land in and around Auburn. I have a friend that sells land, and people come to him all the time and say, look, I'm looking for about, I don't know, 13 to 15 acres really near Auburn with some pasture and some ponds. And he said, oh, so you're looking for a unicorn. That's what you're trying to find, a unicorn.
And that's true. I mean, that's the that's the way it is.
It's true.
But,
it's hard.
But right now, I mean, you can get some good prices here in North Alabama. I mean, you better start jumping on it, because the closer you get to Huntsville, the more expensive it is.
I was in Huntsville last week, Donna. 1 week ago today, I was speaking. I was just walking out. I just finished my talk at Huntsville Country Club.
Nice. Very, very nice out there. Let's talk about, before we have to go, we only have about 8 minutes or less left in the segment. Let's talk about the reason people didn't vote in Alabama. What is wrong with you people in Alabama, for goodness sakes? Over 3 million registered voters. Very small percentage of those folks actually got out and voted. What happened?
Well, and over 5 million in population. So even not accounting for just the for everybody, you're mentioning the number of registered voters, but think about how many there are total. I mean, there are 598,000 I say Republicans, but people who voted in the Republican primary. They didn't have to be Republican to do that. And then about 187,000 voting in the Democratic Party. I don't know how to explain why people didn't turn out. It was awfully bad weather that day where I was. So maybe weather can explain part of that.
I don't care.
Yeah. The other thing is, generally turnout's lower for primaries than for the general election. So I give that a factor as well. And I think that in terms of the two leading presidential candidates, Biden and Trump are going to be the nominees, obviously, at this point. They're both very unpopular for most of the country, for the non committed voter, for the independents. Both men are very unpopular, and that makes this election unusual, I think. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. I don't have the figures for this claim, but it seems to me as if this is an unusual election in the sense that these two men are disliked by so many. Their approval ratings are so low. I don't know that Trump has the same type of approval ratings as a president in office does, but likability, these polls that run on those criteria suggest that Donald Trump doesn't do that well. So you've got two very unpopular people running for a major office, and it will be interesting to see how it turns out. We're not that far away. November comes so fast.
It'll be in a blink of an eye. It's going to be here. But I've got to say this has always happened here. Because I've run some data on that. We've always had low voter turnout. That's insane. And I'm going to give you an example. Some people would say, well, I'm a Democrat, my husband's Republican, whatever. I don't vote. I don't see the point. We're casting each other's vote out. My parents were that way. My dad, Democrat, my mother, Republican. They still voted. They would even walk out the door saying, you're canceling my vote out. I mean, they would actually say that going out the door, but they still did it. And I just grew up thinking everybody in the world voted, because if my parents are going to vote as different as they are in their political aspirations, well, then everybody does.
Well, I think that a high turnout is a sign of a healthy, civic-minded society, of course. On the other hand, I also like that people enjoy the freedom not to vote if they don't want to, for whatever reason they want to do it. My ex-wife was Brazilian, and she was required to vote, as all Brazilian citizens are. Voting is mandatory. And you get lots of people going to the polling station who have no interest whatsoever. And so you end up with a lot of corruption, because people are buying votes from poor people in poor communities. Are going in there and saying, here's $20, go vote for my person. And it's hard to monitor that. And you've got people who don't care about the results of the election. And so they go check boxes and then walk out. So those votes could be detrimental more than helpful to the society writ large. Maybe it is better that the people who are the most informed and are the most committed to seeing their society turn out a particular way be the ones who actually vote. Because if we made it mandatory and people that otherwise have no interest in voting aren't going to take the time to learn the issues, aren't going to take the time to educate themselves, well, I'm okay if those people don't want to vote. If they want to stay home, that's probably a good thing.
Okay, I regress. Okay, in that case, if you're not going to educate yourself and you really don't know, and all you're going to do is I'll go with that one, and then really you don't need to vote. So we
But
need
that's
more voting
your point is
education.
that you need to educate yourself. You need to be a more informed person. Is what the point you're trying to make is everybody ought to aspire to be more educated and informed so that they can participate. You want a Republican form of government, little r, in the sense that everybody is making their will known and expressing their voice and participating in government, because if it's not participatory, then who is the sovereign? I mean, the Constitution begins with the phrase "we the people," and there's a reason for that, because under social contract theory, which is a long-standing theory of government owns that authority which the people authorize it to act, and it can never go beyond that scope. And if the people aren't participating in it, then who's holding government in check?
All right, you've kind of changed my mind on that. However, if I see somebody fussing with me about the way things are, I'm going to ask, did you vote? Did you inform yourself? And if they say no, I'm going to say, get out of my face. I don't want to hear you.
I think that's fair.
Okay, now that I got you on that. But how can people inform themselves? And I get this. I get this where I don't want to watch Fox. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch any of that. So all they do is talk about. I get that. I don't sit and watch it all day either. However, I do listen to both sides so I can get a good informed idea of what's going on in the world. And so what are your thoughts about that? I mean, I get people are tired of hearing it. I get it.
Well, I get it too. I prefer to read the news. I don't get a whole lot out of watching it. So I'm pulling up my phone right now to show you. I go through every single one of these every morning. I read each. You can see it's a wide variety. I'm passing the New York Times now. I'm passing the Wall Street Journal now. I'm passing the Washington Post now. There's the New Yorker, the Guardian. I mean, these, and I could keep going. This list goes forever. I go through the headlines of every single one of those. I don't read every article, but I see what people are talking about. I take note of that. And that's how I wake up. Yeah. But I'm not saying that you have to do what I do, because not everyone has the time to do that. It just happens to be my job to stay informed. And so that's how I make my living. I have to stay up to speed on these kinds of things. But it wouldn't hurt to read, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal every day, just to see what's being talked about. If anything, you don't always necessarily articles, but you might hear hear about an issue and think, I don't know anything about that. I ought to go look it up and find out what that's all about. Like, okay, inflation. We mentioned inflation earlier in this conversation. What causes inflation? What causes currency to be devalued? If you lower interest rates, what happens? If you raise interest rates, if the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, what happens? If the Federal Reserve lower, like why do we talk about this? Why is this in the news? Who's Jerome Powell? These are interesting things that people, if you just curious, you can easily go down the rabbit trail of Wikipedia or something. But I think it's good stuff to read a variety of news sources and get multiple perspectives on things.
I do too. Alan, can you believe this? Hour has just flown by.
It always does.
Always does. How can folks find out more information about you?
Well, my website is www.alanmendenhall.com, and I won't bother spelling it because I can see it on the screen. I guess if you're listening via radio, it's www.alanmendenhall.com. Books are available there. My writing is linked there. So that's probably the central location, the easiest place.
Absolutely. Alan, thank you so much for being with us. And
thank you
so much for being with us as far as you guys are like the best. Thank you so much. Send emails, with other ideas about shows, you're the boss of me. Send an email to donna@donnasedge.com. Alan, hang around just a little bit. I need to get you set up for next month.
Okay, great.
We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.